I want to welcome you to the Ask Jeff YouTube channel. Here's today's question. What are we supposed to learn from the story of Elisha and the bears in 2 Kings chapter 2? Well, if you're not familiar with this story, let me encourage you to go and read it. Elisha is made fun of by a bunch of young people because of his, quote, lack of hair. And when he's made fun of by these young people, a bear is called up by Elisha and he devours them. And so the question is, what are we supposed to learn from this? Well, I really think there's two ways of approaching this very unique story in the Bible. Number one is this, that a God-called prophet of God is not to be mocked, made fun of, or belittled. That's why you see in 1 Samuel in the Old Testament, it talks about do not touch God's anointed. Even remember, David didn't want to touch Saul, who was so corrupt and so wrong in so many different ways. He said, do not touch God's anointed, of which Elisha would be as a prophet of God. So again, I think we learned that lesson, and you go into your Old Testament, you see the kings, the prophets, the priests, and essentially you are messing with a representative of God himself, something you really don't want to do. Now, here's the thing. You go to the New Testament, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2. It talks about that we used to be led by the prophets of old, but now we have Jesus Christ. I would argue from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, there is the spiritual gift of prophecy. I would also state, I don't think the office of prophet exists as it did in the Old Testament. I would even argue that the office of a pastor is not like a priest of the Old Testament. In other words, in your Old Testament, prophets and priests and even kings in some cases were representatives of God on the earth. That's not the New Testament pastor. We are shepherds. We're not vicars of Christ. We're not representatives of Christ. Now, I really don't want a group of young people to come and make fun of my hairline, my stature, or anything else. But I don't think it warrants a bear coming out of the woods and eating them either, because it's just different. That being said, how do we apply this to 21st century Bible-believing theology? If somebody is called of God to a certain service, whatever it may be, I don't think for any reason there should be any belittling like you see with Elisha, but I do think you can hold them, whoever they are, to the context and the veracity of Scripture. Call them out on their interpretation of Scripture, but not simply who they are, what they look like, etc. Great question. Fascinating passage in the Bible. If you haven't read it, go back and read it. It's just one of those. If you have a question, send it to AskJeff.net. Maybe your question could be tomorrow's. Thanks for being a part of today's daily question. Now, we answer a question each and every day. Please feel free to submit a new question at AskJeff.net. We may not have gotten to yours today, but we eventually will continue to be a part of this. Subscribe so you don't miss out on a question every day.